The village of Raven's Hollow crouched at the foot of the Black Mountains like an Omega pack hiding from its Alpha, chimneys smoking nervously into the pale sky. On blood moon nights, no one crossed the threshold, no one whispered above a breath. Those were the nights Queen Lysandra of the Crimson Court rode out from her shadowed castle. 7-year-old Rowan stood outside the smithy, where his father's hammer rang like a heartbeat against the anvil. Sparks flew, orange and wild, painting the boy's soot-smudged face in flickers of light. The forge had always been his world, iron and flame, sweat and rhythm. But tonight his gaze kept drifting to the road that wound past the old gallows tree. "Will the Queen come, father?" Rowan asked, tracing loops in the ash scattered across the workbench. Darren the blacksmith's jaw tightened. "Aye. The blood moon rises. You'll stay inside. The vampire queen and her alpha knights bring nothing but death." "But she's beautiful," Rowan whispered. His father's next blow landed too hard, metal shrieking. "Beauty is a king's trap, boy. An alpha predator's trick. Your mother thought the same once." He didn't look up. He never did when he spoke of her. Rowan lowered his eyes. He had never known his mother, only that she died on a blood moon night when the Queen's carriage last passed through Raven's Hollow. That evening, when ale and grief lulled Darren into sleep beside the embers, Rowan slipped away. In his fist he clutched a small token, a crude gear-shaped charm hammered from scrap silver, the bravest thing his small hands had ever made. He'd imagined hanging it around the neck of a true king, an alpha warrior, or, if the fates were kind, the Queen herself. The cobbled road gleamed like a river of bones. Rowan stood where it bent around the ancient gallows tree, heart rattling his ribs. Above, the blood moon swelled, enormous and wrong. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe for more stories like these and comment where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. A chill swept down the road, making the gallows rope sway. Then came the sound, hooves that struck stone without echo. Out of the scarlet mist, 4 horses appeared, shadow-black, eyes burning like coals, their breath a curling fog of frost. They drew a carriage of black glass and silver, its windows drowned in crimson velvet. Rowan's feet wanted to flee, but something fiercer in him, some stubborn little alpha spark, held ground. The carriage slowed. A pale hand parted the curtain. She was there. Queen Lysandra. Vampire Queen. Knight's crowned alpha. King and executioner in a single, slender body. Her hair fell in a cascade of wine-dark curls over skin as white as new snow. Her eyes glowed not simple red but layered. Rings of garnet, ember, and molten ruby, ancient, amused, and hungry. The road fell silent. "Who dares to stand in my path?" Lysandra's voice slid over the stones like smoke, soft and cold. "Little mortal, do you not know what hunts beneath a kingless moon?" Rowan swallowed. "I'm Rowan, son of Darren the blacksmith, your majesty." He stepped forward, hands shaking, and held up the silver gear. "I made this for you." The Queen's guard shifted. They were pale, beautiful horrors in midnight armor, the elite of her alpha court. Their lips curled, fangs flashing, but Lysandra lifted one finger, and they stilled. She leaned out of the carriage, the scent of old roses and copper wrapping around Rowan. "A blacksmith's whelp," she mused, taking the charm between 2 perfect fingers. "Do you not fear me, child? Do you not know what I am?" "You're the Queen," Rowan said, voice barely more than breath. "The strongest alpha. The most beautiful in all the world." Her lips quirked, revealing the barest hint of fangs. Beauty fades. Power rots. Even an immortal king of the night pays a price. "What payment do you seek for this gift?" Rowan lifted his chin. "When I grow up," he said, words tumbling out before he could stop them, "I'll come back as your alpha king, and be your husband." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Lysandra laughed. The sound rang like crystal breaking in slow motion, drifting over Raven Hollow, making shutters tremble and prayers falter. "Oh, little Omega," she said, eyes blazing with cruel amusement. "The world will chew you to bone long before you ever reach my throne." She tucked the crude charm into the hollow at her throat, close to where a human heart might beat. But I will keep your gift. It entertains me. Her gaze swept him once more, slower this time. Live well, Rowan of Raven's Hollow. Grow strong. When you're a man, I will have forgotten your face. The carriage rolled on, vanishing into fog and moonlight. Rowan stared after it, fists clenched. I won't forget yours, my queen, he whispered to the empty road. I'll return, not as an Omega child, but as the Alpha King you didn't see coming. Far away, within the carriage's shadows, Queen Lysandra turned the rough little charm between her fingers. For an instant, something old and buried stirred in her chest. An echo of a life before crowns and coffins. Curious boy, she murmured. A pity mortals burn so quickly. For the first time in years, when the wolves of the night howled for blood, the queen's hand lifted. Spare the village, she commanded. No one in Raven's Hollow ever knew why. 15 years passed like storm clouds racing the mountains. Raven's Hollow hardly changed. The same thatched roofs, the same crooked well in the square, the same wary glances cast toward the black fortress of Grimspire, where the vampire queen ruled. But Rowan changed. The boy who had once stood trembling under the gallows tree grew into a broad-shouldered man whose hands could bend iron to his will. Under Darren's harsh tutoring, and later, alone after his father's lungs finally surrendered to smoke and age, Rowan became more than a blacksmith. He was a forge singer, coaxing secrets from metal, listening to the way each bar screamed or hummed beneath his hammer. The villagers muttered that he worked like an alpha wolf pacing his cage, relentless, driven, never quite at rest. Some said the queen herself had cursed him that night. Others whispered the opposite, that she had marked him for something greater, something that frightened them more than death. You still dream of her, boy, croaked Yara, the village seer, as he fitted new hinges on her door. Her back was bent, eyes clouded, but they saw through lies like smoke. Rowan wiped sweat from his brow. You know I do. You warned me enough times. The Nosran queen isn't meant to be loved, Yara muttered, tracing an old rune in the air. Her kiss turns kings into thralls and alphas into shadows. Her heart is colder than stone. Their kind aren't mates, they're masters. I made a promise, Rowan said simply. The old woman spat on the threshold. Children make promises the fates weep over later. She's drunk the blood of emperors and crowned kings. What can a smith offer the Queen of Night? Rowan didn't answer. Because in his forge, a different answer already burned. On the anvil lay a half-finished blade, pale as moonlight and dark as old blood. He had spent years crafting it from strange metals purchased with every coin he owned and a few he didn't. Steel from fallen skyrock, silver paid for with calloused hands and sleepless nights, iron pulled from old graves. Its edge glimmered whenever the blood moon rose. Beside it stood a second thing more dangerous still, a metal collar engraved with teeth marks and moon sigils, forged in the shape of an alpha's torque. Yara had told him, voice trembling, that such a thing could bind monster or queen, if wielded by a hand stubborn enough. That's not a sword for wolves or kings, she had warned. That's a challenge to the whole night. You temper it with holy water and ashes and you'll have a weapon that can cut shadow from bone. But it will cut you too. Rowan quenched the blade anyway, steam hissing like 1,000 whispered warnings. He did not intend to slay the queen. He intended to stand beside her. One late autumn afternoon, as ravens wheeled low over the village, distant horns sounded. Riders thundered down from Grimspire, dark cloaks streaming behind them. The lead rider's eyes glowed a soft, unnatural red, half-blood, Rowan realized. Not fully vampire, not quite human. Like an Omega who'd clawed their way halfway up an Alpha's throne. Hear the decree of Queen Lysandra, sovereign of night and blood! The rider called, voice echoing off stone. The gathered villagers shrank back. Rowan stepped closer. A rift has opened in the ashen veil, the rider proclaimed. An ancient beast of shadow and dragon fire, bound since the first kings, has awakened beneath the mountains. Its hunger threatens all territories, human villages, vampire domains, alpha packs, omega clans. The queen offers her favor and protection to any mortal who can still the beast. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Shadow dragons were whispered of in old songs, creatures born before even the first vampire king tasted blood. Their fire was said to melt stone, their shadows to devour souls. Rowan's hand tightened on the rag he carried. Favor and protection. The queen's hunting parties would obey only one command, her own. If he took this chance, he could walk into her hall as more than a trembling boy. He could walk in as someone she owed. That night, the forge burned until dawn. When the final sparks died, Rowan held the finished blade and collar in his hands. The sword was no longer simply metal. Along its spine glowed faint sigils, an alphabet of old kings and older things. The collar's teeth looked almost ready to bite. Rowan named the sword Vowbreaker. The collar he named King's Bind. At sunrise he shouldered his pack, buckled Vowbreaker at his hip, hung King's Bind across his chest, and walked to the road that led away from Raven's Hollow, toward the Ashen Vale, the Shadow Beast, and the queen who had laughed at a child's vow. Yara waited there with a bundle of herbs, a vial of something that smelled like thunder, and eyes bright with fear. "You go not to slay the beast," she said. "You go to claim the queen." Rowan hesitated, then nodded. "I made a promise, Yara." "Then hear an old Omega witch once more," she rasped, tying a charm around his neck. "You walk between powers now. Alpha kings, vampire queens, dragon shadows. Love will not save you from what they are." "Maybe not," Rowan said quietly. "But it might save them from what they've become." The witch closed her eyes as if his words hurt. "Go, then," she whispered, "and pray the night remembers mercy." The road beyond Raven's Hollow felt like another world. Rowan crossed fields where scarecrows sagged under necklaces of wolf teeth and old coins, past shrines where villagers had left offerings to every god and forgotten king they knew, hoping at least one would notice the monster beneath the mountains. By the third day, trees gave way to jagged stone. The air grew thin and hot, tasting faintly of ash. Shadows stretched in directions that made no sense, bending away from the sun. Night fell early in the Ashen Vale. Rowan made camp in the lee of a broken pillar that might once have belonged to a temple, its carvings worn to indecipherable spirals. He just coaxed flame from damp wood when a voice spoke from the darkness. Another hero with steel and stubbornness. Rowan's hand flew to Vowbreaker. The blade sang softly as he drew it, a note only he seemed to hear. A figure stepped into the firelight, cloaked in threadbare finery that might have been regal centuries ago. His hair hung loose, black threaded with silver, his eyes a dark red that glimmered like coals. "I'm not a hero," Rowan said. "Just a blacksmith." "Lies smell sour," the stranger replied lazily. "This valley is bitter with them already." He moved with a predator's ease, circling the fire. His gaze flicked to the sword, then the collar, then the charm at Rowan's throat. "Who are you?" Rowan asked. The stranger bowed, mocking and graceful all at once. "Lord Corvin. Once, I sat at Queen Lysandra's right hand in her crimson court. Now, I haunt the edges of things. Her Alpha Council calls me traitor. She calls me useful." He smiled. His fangs were small but very, very real. Rowan's grip tightened. "You're one of her vampires." "Sharp boy." Corvin's nostrils flared. "But not entirely human yourself, are you? There's a flavor of something about you. Forged iron. Old oaths. Foolish hope." Rowan said nothing. Corvin's gaze sharpened. "You know, little Omega Dreamer, you're not the first mortal to chase our queen. Kings have knelt. Alpha wolves have offered their packs. One dragon-touched knight nearly burned the throne room down trying to prove himself. She buried them all. I'm not them," Rowan said. "And I'm not an Omega." Corvin's grin widened. "Ah. You want to be her Alpha King, then? Very ambitious." He tossed a small stone into the fire and watched it spark green. "So, Why does a mortal boy drag a sword named Valbreaker into a cursed valley on the Queen's command? Rowan stared into the flames. Because, she asked? Because if I still the beast, her realm survives. Raven's Hollow survives. And I'll have earned the right to stand before her and remind her what she promised to forget. Corvin tilted his head. You wish to remind an immortal what it means to keep an oath? Intriguing. He sank down opposite Rowan, cloak pooling like spilled ink. The creature you seek is no simple dragon. It's older than our queen, older than Alpha and Omega bloodlines, older than any king on any throne. It feeds on fear and fire. Then I'll starve it, Rowan said. The vampire laughed, the sound dry as fallen leaves. You speak like an alpha already. Perhaps that's why Lysandra spared your village all those years ago. His eyes flickered. Yes. I remember that night. A child by the roadside. A ridiculous little charm. Her Majesty kept it, you know. Rowan's heart jolted. She kept it? Corvin smirked. Hidden away, of course, like all the things she pretends mean nothing. He rose in a single graceful motion. The beast sleeps in the rift beneath Embercrag, at the valley's heart. Reach it by dawn, and you might catch it half dreaming. If you live. His eyes gleamed. Tell our queen that Corvin sends his unending devotion, and hopes she enjoys the chaos you bring. Before Rowan could reply, the vampire dissolved into a flurry of black crows that wheeled once in the blood-tinted sky and vanished. The fire crackled. Valbreaker hummed against Rowan's palm as if it, too, had heard everything. A dragon older than kings, he whispered, staring toward the valley's burning horizon. A queen older than mercy. An Omega boy pretending he can become an Alpha king. He slid the sword back into its sheath, lay down with king's bind cradled against his chest, and let sleep drag him under. In his dreams, crimson eyes watched him from a throne of shadows. Rowan woke to the smell of smoke and stone. The ashen veil sloped upward into a jagged ridge of black rock, Embercrag. The closer he walked, the hotter the air grew, until sweat rolled freely down his spine despite the chill wind knifing down from the higher peaks. By mid-morning, the ground itself vibrated with a slow, monstrous heartbeat. He reached the lip of a vast fissure, wide as a castle courtyard. Within, a cavern yawned, glowing with a dull, evil light. Heat rolled out in waves, carrying with it the scent of burning bone and something older, like lightning trapped in stone. The shadow beast slept coiled around a lake of sluggish magma, its body a sinuous knot of scales and smoke. Where a normal dragon might be copper or gold, this one was the color of extinguished coals, each scale edged with ember light. Its wings were torn and tattered, yet shadows stitched the holes together. Horns curled from its skull like the twisted roots of an ancient tree. Rowan crouched behind an outcrop, heart pounding. Yara, he whispered. If you lied about the weak points, I'm going to haunt you. He drew Valbreaker. The blade drank in the cavern's red light, its runes kindling like tiny suns. The sword felt heavier now, but right. Like something that had spent 15 years waiting for this moment too. Carefully, silently, he descended along the cracked stone ledges. Heat clawed at his lungs. His boots stuck for a heartbeat each time he lifted them, the rock almost molten beneath the thin layer of cooling ash. When he was close enough to feel the creature's breath, a furnace wind that smelled of charred fear. Rowan stopped. Yara's words echoed in his mind. Shadow or dragon, it doesn't matter. Heart, throat, eyes, or the place where wing meets shoulder. The rest is armor and lies. Right then, he muttered. Throat it is. The beast twitched. Rowan acted. He launched forward with every ounce of strength the forge had beaten into his muscles. Valbreaker flashed, aimed true for the place where scales thinned at the joint of jaw and neck. The dragon's eyes flew open. They were not the molten gold of story. They were black, ringed in white fire, and impossibly deep. Mortal! The creature's voice boomed inside his skull as much as the cavern. You walk where even vampire kings fear to bleed. The sword bit. Not as deeply as Rowan had hoped, but enough. Dark fire erupted from the wound, searing his arms. He gritted his teeth and pushed, driving the blade deeper until vow-breaker met bone. The dragon shadow reared, its roar a sound that shattered stone. Lava surged. Rowan clung to the hilt like a man clinging to a cliff. "You burn worlds," he shouted over the noise. "You won't burn mine." The beast twisted, throwing him. Rowan slammed into rock, ribs screaming. Vow-breaker tore free from his hand and skittered across the cavern, landing perilously close to the magma. Pain blurred his sight. The dragon lunged, jaws opening wide enough to swallow him whole. Instinct, not thought, made him grab King's bind. As teeth descended, he flung the collar. It snapped around the creature's neck, metal clanging against scale. For an instant, nothing happened. Then the runes along the collar flared, bright as noon. Chains of white-hot light exploded outward, hooking into the cavern walls, yanking the dragon's head sideways. The beast shrieked, not from pain alone but from outrage. "You dare bind an old king of fire?" Rowan staggered toward Vow-breaker, half-blind, lungs burning. "Not bind," he rasped. "Just quiet you." He grabbed the sword's hilt, turned, and drove himself forward in one last, desperate charge. This time, Vow-breaker struck true to the center of the beast's chest, where scales parted over a pulsing knot of darkness. The blade sank into the crossguard. For one horrifying heartbeat, nothing happened. Then everything did. The dragon's chest exploded in a storm of shadow and flame. Black fire washed over Rowan, through him, into him. It wasn't like normal fire. It was cold and hot at once, made of broken promises and burned kings, of nights older than the moon itself. He screamed as the dragon's death throes shook the cavern. "Foolish Omega!" The beast's voice thundered inside his skull as its body crumbled. "You could have left well enough alone. Now you are cursed with what I was. A shadow king without a throne." The flames went out. Rowan collapsed. When he woke, the cavern was silent. The dragon's corpse had dissolved into cracked glass and drifting ash. Only Vow-breaker remained buried in stone where the heart had been, its runes now jagged and wild. Rowan tried to stand and stumbled. His skin glowed faintly where the dragon's fire had touched it, black veins spider-webbing out from his heart. His heartbeat sounded doubled, his own and something deeper, older. He looked down. His shadow looked back. It was wrong now. Taller, broader, horns curling from its head, wings unfurling from its back. It shifted even when he stood still, stretching toward the tunnel that led, he knew without knowing how, to Grimspire and Queen Lysandra. "What have I become?" Rowan whispered. His shadow smiled with his mouth. "Something new," it seemed to murmur in the hush. "Not an Omega. Not just a man. Not yet a king. But closer." Rowan wrenched Vow-breaker free. The blade was changed. Etched now with a pattern that looked disturbingly like scales, its edge limned in black-red light. He sheathed it, and began to climb out of the ruined heart of the mountain. The way back to Raven's Hollow was gone. Ahead lay only Grimspire, the vampire queen, and the promise a child had made under a blood moon. The climb out of the ashen vale took hours that felt like years. Rowan's body moved like it no longer belonged entirely to him. His muscles burned, then cooled, then didn't seem to tire at all. His lungs drew in air that tasted of stone and old thunder. Every sound, drip of distant water, crack of cooling rock, flutter of bat wings, arrived sharpened, layered, like he could hear the world breathing. His shadow kept pace at his heels, and sometimes a step ahead. By the time he reached the surface, the sky had purpled toward evening. Grimspire Castle loomed on the horizon, its black towers fused with the mountains like claws. Even from this distance, he could sense it, a steady pressure against his mind, an ancient pulse of vampire magic and king's blood rulings. He set his feet toward it. The path wound through dead pines and broken stone. Twice he sensed movement before he saw it, hunters from the Crimson Court, pale riders on night-black horses. Once, a pack of wolves watched from a ridge, eyes shining silver, their omega strays huddling close to silent alphas. Each time, Rowan stepped off the path and let his charm and shadow swallow his presence. His new senses felt the brush of their awareness, the way their instincts skirted the edge of what he'd become, and decided, for now, not to challenge it. As night deepened, a familiar voice drifted from the dark. "You didn't die," Corvin said, dropping lightly from a boulder as if he'd been perched there for hours. "How irritating for the Ashen Veil." Rowan stopped. "It's done. The dragon shadow is gone." Corvin's nostrils flared, eyes widening a fraction. "Oh, I can smell that. You walk like a grave with a heartbeat now." He circled Rowan once, gaze bright with fascination. "The dragon cursed you as it died, didn't it? Old kings hate to go quietly." Rowan's jaw tightened. "It said I'd become a shadow king without a throne." Corvin's gaze flicked to Rowan's feet. "Your shadow agrees." Rowan looked down. The silhouette stretched longer than it should, the horns and wings more defined, tail lashing faintly behind him like a dragon's made of night. It leaned forward slightly, as if eager, as if looming over him. "I'm still me," Rowan said through his teeth. "For now," Corvin replied cheerfully. "Come then, half-born king. Her Majesty likes her news fresh." His eyes glinted. "You'll find the Grimspire gates less welcoming if you arrive alone." They walked in silence for a while. The castle grew larger with each step, its walls rising from the mountain as if the stone itself had thrust up to cradle the queen's throne. Gargoyles clung to every ledge and angle, eyes faintly glowing, heads turning just enough to betray that not all of them were carved. "What is she like?" Rowan asked at last. "When the court isn't watching. When she's not playing queen or vampire or alpha of this whole realm." Corvin chuckled. "You think I've ever seen her without one of those masks?" He hesitated, then added softer. "But I have seen her when she thought no one watched. Those are the worst nights. When the blood is gone and the music has faded and she sits on that throne like it's built from ghosts instead of stone." "Lonely," Rowan murmured. "Dangerous," Corvin corrected. Then, after a beat, "And yes, very, very lonely. A queen without an equal, an alpha without a pack, a king without another crown beside her own." Rowan's fingers brushed Valbreaker's hilt. "Good. Then she's been waiting for me without realizing it." Corvin snorted. "You mortals and your optimism. It will be the end of us all." The path turned once more and suddenly the castle filled the world, Grimspire's gates a mouth of iron fangs, runes glowing faintly across the bars. The air hummed with warding spells and blood oaths old as kingdoms. Rowan's heart pounded. The child from Raven's Hollow had finally reached the monster who haunted his nights. And now, he would see if the queen remembered the boy who had vowed to become her king. 2 towering iron doors barred their way, each etched with scenes of hunts and coronations, vampire queens standing over kneeling alpha kings, omega supplicants offering their throats, dragon shapes writhing in the background like unwanted memories. As Rowan and Corvin approached, the runes along the gates flared. A ring of scarlet light swept over Rowan from boots to brow, probing not flesh but essence. It snagged on Valbreaker at his side, on the faint glow under his skin, on the restless shape of his shadow. He felt the castle taste him. "Grimspire judges all who seek the queen," Corvin murmured, low enough that the guards on the walls wouldn't hear. "It knows what threatens its king." "I'm not here to threaten her," Rowan said. The light flared brighter at the word her, as if amused. A moment later, the gates shuddered and swung inward. A squad of armored figures waited just inside the courtyard, true vampires, not human thralls. Their armor was black layered with silver, their faces carved with the cold beauty of predators. At their head stood a woman with braids threaded in bone and ruby, eyes the shade of old wounds. "Corvin," she said flatly, "the Queen's stray returns. And you've brought—" Her gaze slid over Rowan, then sharpened like a blade. "What exactly are you?" Rowan forced himself not to flinch as she inhaled, scenting him like a wolf might. "Not human," she murmured. "Not vampire. Not alpha wolf. Not pure dragon. Her lip curled. Something forged between. This is Rowan of Raven Hollow, Corvin said, voice smooth. Slayer of the Ashen Veil Beast, carrier of Dragon Shadow, breaker of fate, pretender to the Queen's throne, and most importantly, he smiled wickedly, the boy who once promised to marry her. A sharp hiss rippled through the guards. The captain's brows climbed slowly. He what? Rowan met her gaze. When I was 7, I stood on a road your queen traveled and put a gift in her hands. I told her I'd return as her husband when I'd grown enough to be worthy. She laughed. He squared his shoulders. I'm here to see if she's still laughing. Silence crackled in the air like lightning. Then, unexpectedly, the captain's lips twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it wasn't pure disdain either. She will want to hear this herself, the woman said. I am Captain Nyla of the Crimson Guard. You will surrender all weapons before entering her throne room. Rowan's hand instinctively went to Vowbreaker. I go nowhere without this blade. Nyla's eyes hardened. Around her, a dozen vampires leaned forward, ready. Corvin sighed theatrically. Ah, mortals. He laid a light hand on Rowan's arm. Let me translate. She means you'll surrender them, or we'll see if your dragon-cursed blood looks as pretty on the floor as everyone thinks it will. Rowan looked from Nyla to the looming towers, to the gates behind him, now slowly grinding closed. If he turned back now, there would be no second chance. He unbuckled Vowbreaker with slow deliberation, feeling his shadow twitch in protest at his feet. The sword stays within reach, he said. I won't draw it unless your queen commands or someone forces my hand. Nyla studied him for a long moment, then jerked her chin. A guard stepped forward and took the blade. But instead of carrying it away, he stayed close, walking just ahead. A compromise, Nyla said. Be grateful. The queen is curious. They led Rowan across the courtyard. High above, gargoyles watched with stone-still faces. The sky bruised toward full night, the first stars fighting through lingering smoke. Inside, the castle was colder than the Ashen Veil. They passed through halls lined with banners, alpha wolf sigils torn and stitched, human king crests defaced with a crimson rose. Mirrors hung between them, but each reflected only Rowan and his too long shadow. The vampires around him appeared as smudges, hollow spaces in the glass. The deeper they went, the heavier the air felt, thick with old blood and older magic. Once, Rowan caught his own reflection and nearly stopped. His eyes, once clear gray, now burned with flecks of molten gold. The veins at his temples showed faint dark traceries, like ink drawn under the skin in patterns he didn't recognize. And his shadow. His shadow stared back with a different angle to its jaw, an almost smile he wasn't making. Don't linger on reflections, Corvin murmured near his shoulder. They make everyone feel like an omega. At last, they reached a pair of massive doors fashioned from some dark, glossy stone veined in red. Carvings of roses, thorns, and watching eyes crawled across their surface. 2 human thralls in crimson livery stood guard, eyes vacant, necks bearing the twin puncture scars of frequent feeding. One thrall intoned dully. The queen holds court. She receives only those who amuse her. Then today is her lucky night, Corvin said. Tell her the dragon's curse has brought her a suitor. The thrall vanished through a side door. Moments later he returned. Her Majesty will see the dragon slayer, he said. He enters alone. Corvin's hand squeezed Rowan's shoulder once, clawed encouragement masquerading as comfort. Nyla's face smoothed into a blank mask. Remember, she said quietly. You stand before more than a queen. You stand before the King of Night. The doors groaned open. Rowan stepped into the throne hall. The hall was vast, a cathedral of shadow and stone. Columns of polished obsidian rose to vanish in vaulted darkness above. Between them, braziers burned with pale blue fire that gave no heat, only light. The floor was a mosaic of black and red marble, patterns swirling like spilled blood frozen mid-flow. At the far end, on a dais reached by 7 shallow steps, sat the throne, a monstrous creation of carved bone and bloodstone, shaped like a rose blooming out of a pile of skulls. Upon it sat Queen Lysandra. For a moment, Rowan forgot to breathe. The memory of a pale face framed in dark curls, glimpsed from a carriage window, had haunted him for 15 years. But that memory was smoke compared to the reality now. She wore a gown the color of fresh spilled wine, clinging to her like a second skin, leaving her shoulders bare. Her hair tumbled loose, black-red waves shot through with hints of midnight, falling over skin so pale it almost glowed. A circlet of silver thorns rested on her brow, tiny rubies gleaming like drops of blood. Her eyes, those impossible eyes, found him at once. Up close, he saw how many colors burned there. The crimson of hunger, the amber of old fire, the dark garnet of centuries of watching mortals live and die. Her lips curved in a smile that was not kind, but not entirely cruel either. "The Dragon Slayer," Lysandra said, her voice echoing long after the words ended. "Ravens whisper, wolves howl, and even my alpha lords tremble at the tale. You've stirred quite a fuss, little mortal." Around the hall, the court watched from the shadows. Vampires in finery from a dozen eras, scattered like stains along the walls. Their faces were beautiful and terrible, ageless and hungry. Rowan walked forward until he reached the foot of her dais. He went to one knee, head bowed, not like a thrall groveling to a king, but like a warrior acknowledging another's power. "Your Majesty," he said, "I've done as your decree commanded. The beast in the ashen veil is stilled." He raised his head. Lysandra gazed down at him, unreadable. "And you paid its price." Her eyes flicked to the faint glow under his skin, to the shadow at his feet that curled like smoke with a mind of its own. "What did it give you when you took its life?" "Power," Rowan admitted. "Fire. Sight sharper than it should be. Strength no mortal should carry." He met her gaze fully. "And a curse. It said I'd become a shadow king without a throne." A murmur ran through the watching vampires. "A king, Nachem?" Lysandra's smile sharpened. "You are ambitious for a blacksmith's son. I was ambitious before the dragon," Rowan said. His voice carried, steady but not loud, through the hall. 15 years ago, when I was only a boy at the edge of Raven's Hollow, I stood in your path. I gave you something forged by my own hands, and I made you a promise." For the first time, something flickered behind her mask. "I told you," Rowan continued, "that when I grew up, I would return to be your husband. Your equal. Your Alpha King." The hall went very, very still. Then the court erupted, some in laughter, some in hisses, some in whispers full of sharp teeth. A few eyes glowed with interest, others with disgust. One vampire woman near the dais stared at Rowan as if he'd stepped off a cliff and flown instead of falling. Lysandra did not join their reaction. She rose from her throne in a single smooth motion and descended the steps, gown whispering over stone. Each step made the night itself seem to lean closer. Up close, she smelled of dark roses, cold iron, and a faint, copper tang. "You presume much," she said softly, standing only an arm's length away. "Many have come to claim me over the centuries. Alpha kings of werewolf packs. Human emperors. Pharaoh gods. All of them have fallen at my feet or under my teeth." She tilted her head, studying his face as if she could read every thought there. "Why should I not rip your throat out where you kneel, little dragon shadow?" Rowan's heart hammered. His shadow twitched, wanting to rise between them, to shield him or challenge her, he wasn't sure which. He forced it down with an effort. "Because," he said, "you kept it." Her eyes narrowed. "Kept what?" "The gift I gave you." Rowan swallowed. "The little silver gear a child hammered too crooked. Corvin told me you didn't throw it away. You kept it somewhere only you know. Queens don't keep trinkets from nobodies." Something flashed across her face. Gone so quickly he almost believed he imagined it. Behind them, the court's noise swelled and then cut off as Lysandra turned her head slightly. "Leave!" she said, not raising her voice. No one moved. Her gaze flicked to the shadows where the oldest vampires lurked, then to the guard captain by the door. Power rolled off her like a storm breaking over the sea. I said leave. This time, the hall emptied. Vampires flowed out like spilled ink, reluctant but obedient. Corvin vanished in a blur of black. Nyla was the last to go, eyes lingering on Rowan with a soldier's wary respect before she slipped through the doors and pulled them shut behind her. Silence fell. Rowan found himself alone in the throne room with the Queen of Night. Lysandra circled him once, slow and careful, like an alpha wolf assessing a challenger who hadn't yet learned he'd already bled. The gear, she said at last, voice quieter. I did keep it. Do you know why? Because something in you, Rowan said, remembered the boy who didn't run. She stopped in front of him. So sure, she murmured. Dragon fire in your veins. Omega heart beating like an alpha's. You come before me cursed, half-born into power, claiming you can stand at my side. He rose from his kneel, not without permission, not exactly, but he did it anyway. I'm not half-born, he said, meeting her eyes. I'm forging myself. Like any good king does. Her lips curved, but her eyes were serious now. Then tell me, Rowan of Raven's Hollow, the vampire queen said, voice like velvet over steel. What do you truly seek here? My throne? My blood? My power? Or the ridiculous thing you call love? Rowan's answer would mark more than his fate. It would decide whether the dragon's curse consumed him, or whether he could bend even queen and king magic to a new shape. Not your throne, Rowan said. The words surprised even him as they left his mouth, but they felt truer than anything he'd spoken under the blood moon. Lysandra's brows lifted. Bold to refuse a crown before it is offered. You already have a crown, Rowan said, nodding toward the thorns encircling her hair. You don't need another king trying to sit higher than you. You need someone who can stand beside you and still look you in the eye. Something in her gaze sharpened. So, she drawled, not my throne. What then? My blood? My bed? My kingdom at your feet like an Omega pack licking an Alpha's boots? I seek you, Rowan said simply. Not what you own. Not what you've conquered. Just you? He almost laughed at how small the words sounded in this hall of bones and shadows and night kings. And what do you think I am? Lysandra asked softly. Her eyes, for once, weren't the eyes of a queen or predator. They were something rawer, searching. A woman who has been queen too long, Rowan said, choosing each word carefully. An alpha with no pack to challenge her. A king with no equal. A monster who remembers, against her will, what it was like to be human. The temperature in the room dropped. Frost spidered across the nearest column. A faint mist curled from his lips as he exhaled. You test dangerous ground, Lysandra whispered. Her fangs lengthened slightly as she spoke. I could shred your mind until you truly believed you were nothing but a dog at my heel. I could drain you slow, savor your dragon fire blood while your shadow howls. I could. You could, Rowan agreed. His voice shook, but he did not step back. You could do all those things. You're queen. King. Alpha of the dark. You owe no one mercy. He took a breath. But you spared Raven's Hollow that night. Her eyes narrowed. You commanded your riders to ride on without killing. Yara doesn't know why. My father didn't know why. The villagers said it was because we were too small to bother. I don't believe that. He held her gaze steadfastly. I think something in you heard a stupid little boy promise he'd become your alpha king and, for the first time in a long while, you wondered what might happen if a mortal kept his word. Lysandra stared at him. The silence between them vibrated like a plucked string. At last she moved. Not away, but to a side table where a single black box rested. She opened it with a reverent motion Rowan had never imagined she'd give anything. She lifted out the silver gear. It was not exactly as he remembered. Time, and vampire magic, had refined it. The rough edges were smoother. The hammered dents shimmered faintly, newly etched with delicate, almost invisible runes. "You were not subtle," she said, turning it between her fingers. "Most mortals scream and weep when I pass. You marched into the road and tried to bargain with a queen." "A promise isn't a bargain," Rowan said. "It's a line you draw in yourself and refuse to cross." She walked back toward him, the little charm gleaming in her palm. "The dragon's curse in you is loud," she murmured. "It snarls. It wants crowns. Fire. Obedience. It would make you a king who devours more than he protects." Her free hand lifted, resting lightly over his heart. Her touch was cold but not as shocking as he'd expected. "But under it, I hear something else. The same foolish, stubborn devotion that made a child stand in front of my carriage." "Love," Rowan said quietly. She flinched, just a flicker. "Love is a mortal word. It has no place in courts like this." "Then call it something else," he said. "Call it oath. Call it madness. Call it whatever your queen's tongue can bear. But you know what it is. It's what dragged me through the ashen veil when any sane Omega would have turned back to their hearth. It's what made me bind a dragon's heart instead of running. It's what keeps my shadow from this." His voice faltered. Her gaze dropped. At their feet, his shadow had stretched again, horned, winged claws digging into the mosaic. It had wrapped itself around her feet at some point, too, trailing up her gown like smoke. Rowan hadn't even noticed. Very slowly, he pushed it back, forcing it to pull around his own boots. "You're dangerous," Lysandra said. It was not a threat. More like a realization, a verdict passed by a queen who'd watched kings rise and fall for centuries. "Not because you carry dragon fire, not because you've tasted old shadow." She lifted the silver gear between them. "But because you believe you can stand in front of a monster and not become one yourself." Rowan swallowed. "Maybe I can't. Maybe the curse will win someday. Maybe there's no happy ending where we sit on matching thrones and rule like some legendary Alpha-Omega pair. Maybe I die screaming in a pit, or you have to rip my heart out to protect your people." "Cheerful," she muttered. "But until that day," he said, "I'll keep choosing you. Over crowns. Over fear. Over whatever this thing in my blood wants. That's what being a king is, isn't it? Choosing who you stand with, again and again, even when the night is louder." For a long moment, the Queen of Night said nothing. Then, to his surprise, she laughed. Not the cold, echoing laughter she'd given him as a child. This sound was softer, rougher, like it had grown rusty with disuse. "You come into my hall cursed, half-shadow, and try to lecture me on kingship," she said. "You are either a fool or—" Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "Something the fates have thrown at me to see if I still bleed." She stepped back, closing her fingers around the charm. "Very well, Rowan of Raven's Hollow," she said. "If you would stand at my side rather than kneel at my feet, you must prove you can walk the border between king and monster without falling." Her gaze flicked to the doors. "The Crimson Council will want to taste your blood and your resolve. 7 elders who have watched whole packs and dynasties crumble. They will test the dragon's curse in you. They will test your Omega heart. They will test whether you truly seek me, or the power I cast in my shadow." She met his eyes again. "If you survive what they demand," Lysandra said quietly, "then perhaps we will speak again of promises made under blood moons." "And if I don't?" Rowan asked. "Then the dragon's prophecy will be fulfilled," she said. "You will become a shadow king who never wore a crown. And I," she looked away for the first time, "will have one more regret to arrange among my bones." She lifted a hand. The doors boomed open. Captain Nyla appeared, flanked by 2 elder vampires whose eyes looked older than Grimspire's foundations. "Take him to the obsidian chamber," Lysandra ordered, her voice once more wrapped in iron and velvet. "Tell the council that the dragon shadow seeks to claim their queen." Rowan's shadow stirred. His heart hammered. He inclined his head. Not as a thrall, not as a subject, but as a man acknowledging that the next steps would decide if he could ever truly stand beside this queen, and call himself her king. Then he turned to follow the captain toward whatever trial the night had prepared for him. The obsidian chamber was not a room built by mortal hands. Rowan felt it before he saw it, like a rumble beneath the world's ribs, a humming pressure that curled under his skin and tugged at the dragon shadow in his blood. The hall leading to it narrowed into a throat of polished black stone. Runes pulsed faintly along the walls, whispering warnings in dead alphabets. Captain Nyla walked ahead with the discipline of someone marching to an execution she refused to fear. "You do understand what's about to happen?" she asked without turning. "No," Rowan said honestly. "But I'm going anyway." Nyla's jaw flexed. "Many have faced the council. Few walk out unchanged. Fewer walk out alive. If you fall to the curse inside you, we will cut your heart out and burn it before it takes root." Rowan's shadow twitched at that, rising like smoke behind him, but he forced it flat again. "I won't fall," he said. "You might," she replied. "Even the queen thinks so." He tried not to let that land too deeply. When they reached the end of the passage, two enormous doors carved from a single slab of volcanic glass parted soundlessly. Beyond them stretched a chamber shaped like a hollowed-out star, 7 angled walls, 7 pools of mirrored liquid, 7 thrones cut from obsidian. And on those thrones sat the Crimson Council. Elder vampires. Power made flesh. Their presence pressed against Rowan's lungs, bending the air around him. They studied him with hunger, curiosity, disdain, like scholars examining a new species and predators examining fresh prey. Nyla bowed deeply. "Rowan of Raven's Hollow," she announced, "Slayer of the Ashen Veil Beast, bearer of the Dragon Shadow, stands for judgment." An elder with silver hair and hollow cheeks leaned forward. When he spoke, his voice sounded like dry leaves crushed underfoot. "The Queen sends us a mortal," he said. "Amusing." "He is not mortal," hissed another, a woman with eyes like cracked garnet. "The curse stains him. It crawls beneath his skin." Rowan forced himself to step forward into the center of the chamber. "I'm here to prove I can stand beside your queen," he said. "Not as a pet. Not as a thrall. As an equal." The elders laughed. The sound echoed off the star-shaped walls, sharp and cold. At last, the eldest among them rose. His skin was pale to translucence, veins like dark branches visible beneath. His eyes glowed faintly violet, a color Rowan had never seen in any vampire before. "I am Elder Varos," he said. "Oldest of the Crimson Court. I knew Lysandra before she wore a crown, before she tasted the blood of kings, before she severed the last ties to her mortal name." His gaze sharpened. "No one stands beside her." Rowan swallowed. "Then I'll be the first." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Varos descended from his throne, approaching Rowan with predatory grace. "The Queen is curious about you," he murmured. "That alone makes you dangerous. Curiosity is the one hunger she does not tame easily. So we will test you, Dragon Shadow. We will see what lies beneath that beating heart." Nyla stepped back, tension coiling in her shoulders, but she did not interfere. Varos extended one hand. Long, elegant fingers brushed Rowan's temple. The world shattered. Rowan's knees buckled as images slammed into him, memories that were not his, sensations that reeked of ages he'd never lived. He saw Lysandra before the crown, laughing with mortal warmth still in her cheeks. He saw her crowned, fanged, hands dripping with the blood of kings who challenged her. He saw her alone, night after night, sitting on her throne while centuries turned to dust around her. He saw her watch a small boy lift a silver charm up to her carriage window, and for one heartbeat, remember her own lost humanity. Rowan gasped. The dragon shadow surged in him, roaring, wanting to take these memories and twist them, reshape them into hunger and dominion. Varos's voice slithered through the haze. "Your power is unstable," the elder murmured. A fire that eats its vessel. The dragon curses you to ascend as a king of shadow. The queen is not a throne for you to sit, she is a throne to be survived. Rowan forced his voice through gritted teeth. I don't want to survive her. I want to stand with her. Varos's eyes flared violet. Then prove you can stand at all. The world snapped back into place. Rowan collapsed to one knee, sweat slicking his palms. Varos beckoned. A second elder rose. This one with hair the color of ash and skin so pale it looked like carved moonstone. She carried a shallow bowl filled with shimmering crimson liquid. Rowan knew instinctively what it was. Vampire blood. Drink, Varos commanded. Rowan's pulse thundered. The dragon shadow hissed in his bones, eager. No, Rowan said. I won't take vampire blood. I won't become something I'm not. This is the trial, Varos said. To take what you are not and resist becoming it. To swallow power without letting it devour you. Drink. Rowan's shadow stretched, trembling with hunger. His vision blurred at the edges. The dragon's curse pulsed like a heartbeat not his own. He reached for the bowl. His fingers hovered over the rim. His heart beat once, twice. Then he closed his fist. I won't drink it, he said, voice cracking under the strain. Your queen doesn't need another monster fighting her for the throne. She needs someone who can resist being devoured by the darkness in front of him. Gasps echoed. Nyla took a step forward. Whether out of fear or respect, Rowan couldn't tell. Varos's lips curled, amused. Stubborn. Dangerous. Predictable. He gestured. Another elder stood, this one tall, broad-shouldered, with dark braids and a cold sneer. He flicked his wrist. Chains of shadow whipped across the floor, coiling around Rowan's ankles and wrists. Power surged through them, cold as glacier water, burning like truth. Then you will face your curse directly, Varos said. We will peel back your humanity and see what remains. The dragon shadow inside Rowan uncoiled like a waking serpent. His vision dimmed. His veins burned. His breath hitched as the room around him twisted, warped, darkened. And then, reality cracked. Rowan fell through it. He landed standing on a vast plain of ash, under a sky that looked like a blood moon split open. His shadow towered behind him, horned, winged, claws long enough to rend mountains. This was the curse. This was the king he might become. The shadow stepped forward. It smiled Rowan's smile, but colder. Sharper. Crueler. Give in, it said, voice like creaking stone. Wear the crown. Take the queen. Consume the court. Break the night. Rowan's throat tightened. This was the trial. Not vampire blood. Not the elders. Not the castle. This. Facing himself. Facing what he could become. He squared his shoulders. I won't be you. You already are, the shadow murmured. She will never love a mortal. She will never kneel. She will never bleed. But she will fear me. And fear is a throne stronger than any crown. Rowan shook his head. Lysandra doesn't want a tyrant. She wants someone who sees her. He took a step. His shadow mirrored it. He took another. The shadow did too, laughing. Rowan clenched his fists. I didn't slay the dragon so I could become one. The shadow lunged. Rowan braced. And the world snapped. He hit the floor of the obsidian chamber on both knees. Gasps echoed around him. His shadow, normal again, shivered on the stone. Rowan wiped blood from his mouth. I'm not here to be a king, he rasped. I'm here to love your queen. Silence slammed into the chamber. Varos stared. Then, slowly, impossibly, he bowed his head. The trial is complete. Nyla sucked in a sharp breath. Rowan lifted his eyes. Does that mean? It means, Varos said, you may stand before the queen again. Whether she accepts you, that is another trial entirely. Rowan pushed himself to his feet, legs trembling, shadow steady behind him like a promise refusing to die. Then take me to her, he said. I made her a vow under the blood moon. It's time she hears the rest. The walk back through the castle was strangely silent, as if even the stones were holding their breath. Captain Nyla didn't speak. Not once. She kept glancing at Rowan out of the corner of her eye, as though expecting him to dissolve into ash or sprout wings of molten shadow at any moment. He couldn't blame her. His knees still trembled from the trial. His veins still hummed with the echo of the dragon shadow's laughter. But beneath all of that, something else pulsed, something steadier, brighter. Lysandra. Rowan felt her presence the way a moth feels fire. Not fear, gravity. A pull from somewhere deep inside him, like the bond he had caught glimpses of in the obsidian chamber, was now tugging him forward. You should know, Nyla finally said, voice low. The Queen has not left the Star Chamber since you entered the trial. Rowan blinked. She waited? She's the Vampire King, Nyla corrected softly. She doesn't wait for anyone. But she didn't sound convinced. They turned into a narrow hallway lined with torch sconces. Blue fire burned in each one, cold flames that cast long shadows, all pointing toward the same iron-bound double doors. Rowan inhaled. The air tasted of smoke, winter roses, and something else, something electric. Nyla halted. This is where I leave you. He nodded. Thank you? She hesitated, just for a moment, then said, For what it's worth. I hope you survive her. Rowan gave a weak, crooked smile. I already have. Nyla snorted. You've survived the council. Surviving your own heart is different. Then she stepped back, vanishing into the corridor like a blade sheathed in fog. Rowan faced the doors. He raised his hand. He knocked. The doors opened instantly, as if she'd been standing right on the other side. The chamber beyond was vast, an open expanse of black marble and moonlight. High arched windows let in the pale glow of the night sky, turning the air silver. Candles hovered in midair, suspended by some ancient spell. The atmosphere shimmered with quiet, coiled power. At the center stood Lysandra. She wore no crown, no armor. Only a soft gown of midnight silk that clung to her like shadow to a flame. Her hair spilled in long red waves down her back, brighter than any fire Rowan had ever forged. But it was her eyes, those deep, impossible crimson eyes, that held him. Cold. Unfathomable. Ancient. And yet, something warm flickered there. Something human. Something she hadn't shown in centuries. Rowan. Just his name, but the way she said it, it cracked something open in his chest. He stepped forward. You knew I'd survive. No, she said quietly. I feared you would. He frowned. She glanced away, jaw tightening, an expression she rarely let anyone see. The dragon shadow inside you is not merely a curse, she murmured. It is a hunger. A throne. A future written in blood and night. I feared it would take you the way time takes all things. Rowan's shadow flickered behind him, but this time, it stayed contained, docile as a sleeping beast. It didn't, he said. I fought it. Many before you have tried. Her voice sharpened. All failed. I'm not them. That made her look up. Something in her posture changed, subtle, like the shift of wind before a storm. She stepped toward him, each movement fluid as a cat crossing moonlit stone. Show me your eyes, she whispered. Rowan didn't hesitate. He raised his head. Let her look. Let her see everything. Her breath hitched, barely audible, but real. The gold is stable, she murmured. The darkness does not bleed through. It won't, Rowan said. Not while I choose you. Her expression flickered, pain, memory, disbelief, hope, then smoothed into something unreadable. You faced the council, she said. You resisted the blood. You faced your shadow self. And you did not break. I told you, Rowan said softly. I didn't come here to win a throne. I came here because a child made a promise to a queen of shadows. Her throat bobbed. And I intend to give her everything he wished he could. Silence settled thick and living between them. Then Lysandra stepped closer, so close her breath grazed his skin. Her hand lifted, hovering near his face, not touching, trembling ever so slightly. When you were brought in, she whispered, bleeding, half-conscious after the council's trial, I found myself unsettled. Rowan's heart hammered. Not fear. Not the curse. Something warm. Something raw. What were you afraid of? He asked quietly. Her eyes rose to his, ancient, impossible, burning. That you would die, she said. And that I would feel it. The truth hung between them like a pulse. Then, her fingertip brushed his cheek. Just a whisper of touch. But it felt like lightning threaded through silk. You bind me, she murmured. You immortal. You twist threads of fate around me that no king, no alpha, no vampire has ever managed. I don't bind you, Rowan said. I choose you. And if I commanded you to kneel? His shadow twitched. His pulse roared. But he shook his head, slowly, firmly. You're powerful, Rowan murmured. But I'm not here to be ruled. I'm here to stand beside you. The Queen of Night deserves someone who sees her, not someone who worships the throne she sits on. Silence. Heavy. Electric. Fragile. Then Lysandra laughed. Not cruel. Not mocking. Soft. Startled. Almost human. She stepped even closer, lips inches from his. You survived the council, she whispered. Now survive me. Rowan's breath caught. Try me. Her smile turned predatory and devastating. We begin at dawn. Why dawn? Because that is when I am weakest, she said. And if you can love me then, you may yet survive loving me at all. Her hand slid around the back of his neck, drawing him in. Their foreheads touched. Not a kiss. Not yet. Something more dangerous. More intimate. You will have my answer soon, she breathed. As to whether I allow you to stand at my side, or tear out your heart for daring to want it. Rowan swallowed. Which way are you leaning? Her lips brushed his ear. Ask me again at sunrise. And then she vanished. Like mist folding back into the night. Leaving Rowan standing alone in the moonlit chamber, pulse racing, shadow steady, heart no longer entirely his. He looked toward the windows where the faintest edge of dawn glowed. He exhaled. Dawn it is! Dawn bled slowly over the distant mountains, soft gold seeping into the night like a secret the sky could no longer keep. Rowan stood at the tallest balcony of the castle, the same one Lysandra had vanished from hours earlier. His breath misted faintly, though the cool morning air no longer bit him the way it once had. Whatever he was now, he was something meant to stand at the edge of darkness and daylight. Behind him, the iron-bound doors whispered open. He didn't turn. He knew her steps. Light footsteps, soundless as feathers falling onto snow. Rowan. Her voice, quiet. Not the Queen's voice. Not the immortal ruler feared across kingdoms. Just her. Lysandra. He turned. She stood before him wearing a simple cloak of silver-threaded cloth, the hood down, her flame-red hair catching the dawn light like a rising blaze. For the first time in centuries, dawn touched her fully, and she didn't shrink away. The light kissed her skin gently, not burning her but warming it, softening the marble into something living. Something mortal. Something possible. She exhaled shakily. No one has seen me in the sunrise since the year I became queen. Rowan swallowed. Does it hurt? It always hurt, she whispered. But today, it doesn't. She stepped closer, until her fingers brushed his. His dragon shadow twitched but did not rise. It lay calm, subdued by something far greater than fear or hunger. Lysandra looked up at him, crimson eyes glowing softly in the morning light. I did not summon you here for a trial, she murmured. Nor for a warning. Her hand slid fully into his. I came to give you my answer. Rowan's pulse hammered, but he did not let it show. And what is your answer, Lysandra? She lifted her free hand, touching his jaw the way a painter touches a canvas they've long studied but never dared to begin. When you came to my court, she said softly, I believed you a fool. Her thumb brushed along his cheekbone. When you survived the council, I believed you a danger. Her breath trembled. When you offered me your blood, I believed you a temptation. And now? Rowan whispered. No, she breathed. I believe you are the first thing in centuries strong enough to change me. The dawn climbed higher. She did not burn. She leaned forward, not with the hunger of a predator, but with the trembling grace of a woman who had forgotten how to reach for anything without crushing it. Rowan met her halfway. Their lips touched, slow, steady, certain. No roaring shadows. No ancient curses. Just two souls, one forged in fire, one carved from night, reshaping the world between them. When they finally parted, Lysandra rested her forehead against his. Rowan of Emberfall, she whispered, you once told me you would return when you were grown. And you laughed at me, he said softly. Her smile curved, small but real. I am done laughing at you. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling the dawn warm both their skins, the impossible, beautiful truth of it settling over them. What now? He asked. Lysandra's crimson eyes reflected the rising sun. No, she said. You stand at my side. Not as a thrall, not as a subject, not as a suitor begging favor. She lifted his hand and pressed the transformed silver and ruby rose into his palm. But as the only one I choose to walk with into eternity. A surge of warmth, bright, golden, living, pulsed through Rowan's veins, eclipsing the dragon's shadow entirely. The sun rose fully. The vampire queen didn't hide from it. And Rowan realized something quietly miraculous. For the first time in 7 centuries, Lysandra was not alone. And for the first time in his life, either was he. Thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and comment what your favorite part was. It helps our story continue.